And we're live.
We're live.
Every time. Well, I guess I got to speak into the mic. And we're live. Check 1, 2. I'm assuming everybody can hear us.
Can they hear us?
Papa, can you hear me? Sorry.
No, it's good.
Sorry, no singing. Let's see here.
So we're doing some hand engraving basics. Look at those engraving tools. Whoa.
Goodness.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Whoa. Oh, wow. Alright. Too early for this, people. So I apologize.
Let's see.
Oh, and big in this. And big in. Oh, here we go. Okay. We're almost ready, folks.
Ian Sim. Bonjour.
Hey.
I have a French, New York, North Carolina accent. That's good.
No, it's still going, I guess.
Yeah, everything's good. I got sound. You gonna do some scratching today, Ryan?
Yep, I'm gonna do some scritty scratching. I'm gonna go over the basics, hand engraving, my notes, got my engravers.
Here, let's show them. Let's show them what you're working with here. You've got. What do you got? Your playlists going on there too? That's good.
I'm trying to see if I can get everything set up so I can watch. I don't even know how to work this. Oh my goodness.
Neil's here.
Is it?
Neil.
Here you go. Medic. Live video.
So you got some plates over here. Is that going to be for some demonstrating?
Yep, I'm gonna show. I guess we're started here.
Oh, I mean, if you want to,
Yeah,
sure, yeah.
We might as well. So, yes, I'm gonna go over some hand engraving basics today. Kind of a brief overview of the style of hand engraving that I do here at MusicMedic, whether it be restorations, doing recuts, or if I'm doing custom work. So
Neil wants a dragon.
dragon. Okay, we can do a dragon with flames, riding a unicycle.
Okay.
If you can dream it, I might be able to do it.
Now, Ryan, before we get started, most people don't really have an idea about engraving and its processes. And I think that if you guys are out there, that maybe we need to share this video around to all the groups.
Absolutely.
What are they going to win? Can they win this T-shirt right here?
This T-shirt right here.
I
Yes.
think if you share this to the groups and you haven't already won a T-shirt, you can win.
That's right. We'll be checking the shares. You can win a T-shirt. Not this exact T-shirt. I'm wearing this.
But I'm going to get on there and I'm going to try to share it.
Ooh,
Who am I going to?
T-shirt.
I'm going to share it to the Flute Forum.
Okay, very nice.
See if just to get you guys started. And share this video around everybody, and the first person to share it to the, how about, what do we got?
We have a trumpet forum. Who is there like a cornet or a trumpet?
Oh, that would be
consortium?
good. Yeah.
Cornet consortium. Maybe.
First person to share it to the trumpet group,
Yeah.
the trumpet brass group,
Yeah.
because I'm about to go on to the hobby saxophone repair enthusiasts. So,
Uh-oh, people. All right, so let's go ahead and get.
okay, sorry.
Get
Go ahead.
started here. No, that's good. Win a T-shirt, share and win.
Share and win.
So yes, I'm going to go over the style of engraving that I do here at MusicMedic, and the style that I do is called wriggle cut. Wriggle cut. Some
Wriggle
people call
cut.
it wiggle cut. I'm not going to correct you to say it, but it's wriggle cut versus a push cut, or more kind of the jewelry firearm style engraving that uses different types of machinery. But you can see here my selection of tools. We get a little some pan down.
Yeah.
These are all my different tools. I'm going to go over first the different styles of gravers, just so we're clear on things. The engraver is the person, me. The graver is the tool that's actually used to do the engraving. So just so so we're all set on that. But the different types of gravers, there's some very common ones which are traditionally called flats. And the main reason for that is the bottom of them
Bring that way up.
flat. It's going to be tough to see, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually draw the line that it makes. And we'll give you some close-ups here, but for a flat, and this is a 40, and that has to do with the width of the actual blade. The bigger the number, the wider the blade. But a flat, when you make a zigzag, or when you make the cuts, are going to look like this. So your traditional back and forth. And this
Okay.
would be a flat.
Okay.
So that's a very, very common, what's used mostly in most engravings nowadays. If you see it on, pretty much any horn, they're using most likely going to be flats. Another one that I like to use quite a bit are called liners. This is a liner right here. And you can see I have it labeled on the back, which is saying a 22-6. Okay. The 22 is the width of the blade. The 6 means there's 6 lines. There are actually grooves on the bottom. They're very small, so that if I were to make a cut with a liner, it would look like this. Sometimes it would actually look like dashes.
Hmm. Lewis from South Africa is watching.
Nice. Should have people from all over.
Share this video, Lewis.
Yes. So these two are basically liner cuts, whether it be just looking like the dots, but it still has that zigzag pattern, or if it has more of kind of the accentuated the lines on them. Hence, that's why it's called a liner. These were traditionally used in the older vintage style horns. Kahn used this quite a bit. Selmer used this. Martin, all of the older gravers used this. Fun fact about this exact graver right here, this was actually given to me by Sherry Huntley, master engraver. Everybody knows Sherry.
Oh, yeah. We love Sherry.
Yes, we love Sherry. Her work is fantastic. I learned a lot from her. But this was given to me when I took one of her courses. And this graver was actually used at the Kahn factory.
Is that what they use to engrave the cleavage in the Naked Lady?
No, they actually use a different style. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a little different. That's straight cut stuff. But,
Okay.
But yeah, this was all for the liners. This is the 22-6. So when I do recuts on Kahns, and even Selmers use this style as well, I'm using the original graver from the Kahn factory.
Wow.
So that's kind of a neat little fact there.
Can I touch that one?
Yeah, but they all come in different sizes. They're usually 2 numbers. This one is a 10-8. 10 again is that first number is the width of the blade, and then the 8 is how many dashes or how many lines are on the bottom of that. Then you also have what is called a round. Okay, and the reason why they call this a round is because the bottom of this is round. I don't know if you can see this. Again, it's kind of hard, so I'm going to draw what a round looks like, and it kind of looks like this. You can see this one's more straight with the flat, and the round has more of these arcs to them. You're still using that zigzag pattern. So that is one. Selmer uses this quite a bit. I like to use this one as well. It has nice accent lines. It's just a different shape, working with different textures. So, and then you get into some of the bigger ones, like your shaders.
Ooh.
Okay.
Whoa.
And these are bigger. A lot of times, you can see here, we have to custom make. I have to custom make my gravers. These are old files that I basically shaped. And these are ones in the bigger areas that you see, and they're a lot bigger. And obviously they have.
So similar to the round, but
Similar to the round, but just way bigger, and it's used for shading bigger areas.
okay.
You can see this is a wider shader. Here's some different shaders I had to make. This is one I actually had to make. The bottom of this is a V-point, and I had to make this because I was doing some custom engraving on a Yamaha, and their shaders are slightly different. So rather than having kind of this rounded shape, it actually has more of a V shape, kind of like that, because the bottom of this is shaped like a V. I don't know if you can see there. And then over.
Oh yeah.
So that's just one that I had to kind of make to match the existing engraving. You can see I've used files to make them. So that's just kind of the standard, the 4 different types. You know, your flat, your liners, your round, and then obviously your shaders, grow and shade. I have also a couple of older antique gravers. In fact, that's how I got started. Is I bought a lot of antique gravers off of eBay, and it was a lot of, I believe, about 100 of them. And I would say probably a third of them were good and usable. You know, almost as is. They were fairly sharp. The other third was I had to clean up a little bit, and some of them were okay. The rest of the third were just not applicable to what I do as far as the wriggle cut. It was more of the straight cut stuff and some old rustier ones that really couldn't be salvaged. Here is a neat graver of that group. Okay, see if we can get a nice close-up of that. And the very tip is a very, very, very small wheel. And when you ride it on the brass...
Really?
Again, it's going to be kind of hard to see because it's so small. If you can see right there.
This, yeah.
And it's like it's like a beaded.
Let me go hands-free and see if I can get that really close.
Yeah, it's tough. If I were to draw this, what this looks like is this.
Can you do that one more time?
Yep. So it's with the tool.
With the tool.
So right here, you can see. So you can see it's a there you go. Yep, it's a very small series of dots. So it's kind of a neat, if I wanted to add some texture to something, I could use this. So that's kind of a neat one. Here's another shader that I like to use that's made from an old file. And this was part of that set that I got. So a different type of graver, this one right here, this has kind of a V point to it. This is what I use some of the time if I'm doing the push cut. Rich, you asked, what did the naked lady? It's usually done with the straight cut, doing it by hand, which was very, very difficult. Those guys that did that straight cut stuff, especially at the Con factory, were extremely skilled. So this is a difficult thing to master with doing the straight cut stuff.
Is it because it just allows for so many mistakes that could happen? Like if somebody goes the wrong way?
It could slip. What they use nowadays, and I've been messing around with this, is pneumatic, air powered. It's like a miniature jackhammer that just hammer and chisel is a lot of times what they'll call it when you're doing straight cut stuff like this, where you actually hold it and then you'll with a hammer guide it, hit it and actually move it and make your lines. I don't do a lot of that, but when I do usually try to use the pneumatic engraver, which I've been messing around with. So so that's your basic types of gravers. Like I said, there are varying widths. There's some setup to them. Obviously, sharpening them is it's a task. It's probably one of the most important things when I was learning engraving is learning how to properly sharpen your gravers.
Okay.
If they're not sharp, they are going to slip.
Okay. What do you use for sharpening?
For sharpening, I use what is called a Crocker jig.
Love the name.
Crocker. Okay, I didn't name it, but this is basically the apparatus that I use when I'm sharpening them. And I use a sharpening stone. Okay, as long as you have a flat surface, sometimes I'll use a glass plate for doing mouthpiece refacing. But you're basically just making sure that it's completely flat. Setting up this and getting the angles right, that's for a later date.
Okay.
There is some geometry done to this, but if you'll notice, this is a liner, okay? And when I sharpen it, this is how I've been using it, I'm actually sharpening technically the top side of it. So again, here's the engraver how I would use it. When I'm sharpening it, it's in there like this. Keeps everything nice and flat. The reason why I don't sharpen the bottom is because I don't want these lines to go away.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the main reason why I don't do that. Okay, so sharpening, you get your angles just set up right. There's some tips and tricks to that. You can use a Sharpie on the tip.
Right.
Darken it just slightly, and then just And then you can see where you're cutting. I kind of did some pre-prep work here on this one, and you can see what's being cut or what's being sharpened and what's not. Use a little bit of oil.
Does it matter the oil? I see you have Ultimax there.
It doesn't. This stuff is great because it has different thicknesses, but it doesn't matter so much about the different type of oil that you have. The main thing is it's just taking, you know, the small micro dusts and the chips and whatnot, and it's just kind of getting it out of the way.
Okay.
And then you're just going to go back and forth. You can go straight back and forth. I tend to do kind of elongated oval, and the main reason so I don't dig a groove into my sharpening stone. Just kind of going back and forth, wiping it off and checking it. Okay, for your kind of general shape. Oh, this is a two-sided sharpening stone. I'm using the finer of the two.
Okay.
I don't find that I really need to use the very coarse side of the stone. If I do need to do some shaping on the tip, let's say it's in an angle like this and I want to open it up like this, I'll take it to a grinding wheel.
Okay.
So, yeah, very slow moving grinding wheel, making sure I quench so I don't overheat the tip to get some general shaping. But usually once you get the shape right for the graver, you don't have to keep doing that. It's just a matter of putting it back in the crocker and then just cleaning up that edge. Once you get it to where it's pretty good with this, I'll take a piece of sandpaper. So I think this is either 1500 grit or 1000 grit. And I'll just go kind of lightly, just like that. And that just kind of puts a little bit of a shine or a sheen. See if I can get that reflection there. It is. Okay, get that little bit of a reflection. So it just kind of cleans it up and makes it smooth. So that's the essential basics. Again, like I said, there's more into it as far as shaping, getting the tip angle just right, you know, shaping the tip. But having this crocker jig, because trying to sharpen these small things by hand, it's a pain. So having this be the same angle every time is exactly what you need.
And so the jig is keeping the angle for you.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Keeping the angle for you. So, let's see here. Oh, the other thing I'll do a lot of times is I'll take a piece of leather, and since I work here at MusicMedic, I have unlimited access to kangaroo leather, which is extremely strong leather. And what I'll do with that is I'll kind of I believe in the sharpening world it's called stropping.
Stropping.
Stropping. A lot
Love
of times
it.
they'll do it with straight edge razor blades. Here I just do it to kind of clean up.
Can you put your leather on a wood backer or anything like a?
Yep. I'll put it on I'll usually put it on the table, or we have the rubber mats on the bench, which I find is nice because then that little bit of a rubber will give. But just to kind of clean it up. The other thing I'll do is if I'm using a liner. Okay, and those grooves are very small. Sometimes little bits of metal, you know, obviously brass. So I'm working mainly in brass. Will get stuck in there as I'm making a cut. Sometimes when I stop, I'll come back and just kind of clean that out using the leather. So that's nice having. So
you want to have leather just kind of at the bench as you're doing engraving as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the sharpening. That's the styles and the sharpening. Now the technique. Actually, how do we do this wriggle cut? Okay, well I'm just going to show you on kind of a blank piece of sheet brass here, and I'm gonna go with a 40 flat. Okay, so this, looking back at this, would look like this.
Okay.
This would be our solid zigzag. Okay.
Now, when you're before you get started, Ryan, when folks are practicing at home, do you recommend, like you've done this many times, but do you recommend securing the brass to anything, or?
That would be good. Yes, if you can get it. That's one of the tricky things is workpiece holding. If you'll kind of scan over here real quick, you can see when I engrave a saxophone, I usually do it on a mandrel, and it's very stable.
Okay.
There are some engravers that when they're engraving, they'll put it in their lap, and that's fine too. The big thing is keeping everything steady. So whether you hold it in your lap and you engrave, or you engrave on a mandrel, workpiece holding is very important in having it stable. So I wouldn't, if I were engraving this, I would not hold this like this engraved.
Okay.
I would have it, maybe taped down, or have this on when I've made practice templates, I've taken pieces of plastic cutting board and made a loop, so they can have kind of that area to move it around. For demonstration purposes, obviously, I'm just going to have this plain sheet brass.
Okay.
One important thing I will say, if you are going to start practicing engraving, be very careful because these are sharp. Okay, I'm sure if you're a repair technician, you've probably stabbed yourself with a screwdriver blade. Those aren't meant to be razor sharp, and those really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
These are meant to be sharp, so this is really, really, really going to hurt.
Really sharp.
So yeah, just like with when you're working with a screwdriver, anytime you're making your cut, you always want to have your hand, your free hand, this side of the blade. So if I'm engraving, I would never, ever engrave like this. I mean, there's maybe times where I just can't get around it, but I'm very aware that I'm pointing a very sharp implement at my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anytime you're engraving, I've seen engravers as well that they like to use a glove. You know, big, like a welding glove or a big work glove, a big leather glove. Perfect. Okay. So the action, the way you're holding it is I'm holding it in the palm of my hand, guiding it with these 3 fingers, or these 2 fingers, or really 2 fingers and a thumb. Okay, just like that. And it's just like I'm turning a doorknob. That's the action that I'm doing. So when I do this wriggle cut, I'm just rocking back and forth. And you can see
The wriggle.
the wriggle.
How much pressure do you use?
That's a good question. I use enough to keep the blade engaged with the brass, but not so much pressure that I'm denting it on the backside. Okay. Obviously, too much pressure, you'll dull your blade, your tip of the graver a little bit quicker, and it's not really necessary. These tools will kind of guide themselves. So I'm just kind of using a little bit of pressure to keep the blade engaged with the brass as I'm wriggling back and forth. And there's no real push going on. That's a lot of people will do is, and when they first start out, they'll push, and next thing you know, their lines are kind of back and forth, zigzagging more than it needs to. Let this action of this walk the blade across. Again, if I want to do a curve, it's just kind of slowly wriggling as I'm moving. And at the very end, kind of that little flick, and you can see, if you do it just right, you'll get a nice curl of brass. And again, this is our 40 flat. This is our 40 flat. I'm going to show you a liner, and this is probably my favorite. This is the 22.6 from the Con Factory. This is probably one of my favorites just because the line just gives it a little bit of depth to it. So again, you use it the same way, same technique. And again, here you're just, whoop, sometimes that happens, slips. You're just wriggling back and forth. And you can see with this one, if you can kind of zoom in, that dotted pattern. This one is tough because, and you saw when it slipped there, because it's basically like teeth that you're rocking back and forth, and a lot of times the teeth on the very end will chip off. So when you go and rock this, it'll slip, which may be the case with this. Ian
Sim is saying, are all the gravers curved at the end?
That's a good question, Ian. Yes, finally a good question from you. No, that is a great question. I tend to order most of my my flats and my liners to be bent. Okay, you can either get it straight, you can get them curved, or you can get them bent. From the company that I get most of mine from, which is E.C. Mueller, based out of New York. But I tend to get most of my liners and my flats to be bent, so you can see it's pretty much straight, and the tip is bent, and that's just for ease of use and comfort, being able to get around, especially the saxophone. Okay, if you're engraving up in this area, having that bend is nice. Okay, versus a flat which kind of gets in the way. Now I do order straight ones when I do ones like my round. You can see that is straight. Same thing with my larger shaders, they're all straight. Okay, I just find for these are just a little bit more comfortable for use. So, but yeah, that is a good question. And then again, the handles, they vary. You can see on my antique gravers, they're a lot different than the newer style.
Hmm.
You can see here. So, but yeah, that is a good question. The shape. This bend doesn't necessarily change the look of the engraving mark that it's going to make. It's just purely for ergonomics.
Okay.
So that's your basic your technique as far as rocking back and forth. I showed you a flat. I showed you a liner. Let's do a round. These are fun.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the one with the round bottom.
Can you show them that paper
Yes,
again? Because
absolutely.
we got a
So
few.
the round is going to be this one right here. It's going to have these arcs versus being flat. So we did the flat. That was the first one. Then we did the liner. That's the one I slipped on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now we're doing the round. Okay. So here we go. And you can see this one. Again, just wriggling back and forth like I'm turning a doorknob. And you can see there. Kind of those arcs. The neat thing about having this round bottom is you can actually change what this mark looks like depending on how far back and forth you wriggle. With the flats, there is only one. You know,
Okay.
you can either go from corner to corner, that's it. Here, because there is technically no corner, it's round. You can stop at any point and change. So if I want to go real wide, and then if I want to go, make it look like that, you can see I can taper it down to make it look smaller.
Oh, wow.
So
And Ian's asking, how do you vary the pitch of the lines?
as far as how far apart they are, that depends on how far up your elbow is.
Okay.
Okay, and I can really demonstrate that when I do the liners here. And I'll show you, this is the shader. So I'm going to be doing the larger shading lines here. So here's you can see how wide this one is. But if I bring my elbow up,
Here, let me back out so they can see where your elbow is. It's like at 90 degrees.
yeah, versus bringing it down this way. So you can see the slight difference. Usually the higher it is up, especially if you're working with, one of the flats, the higher it is, the more compact the lines are going to be.
So at the top of your example here, your elbow was at 90 degrees, and then as you moved through the middle and towards the end, you started to angle it more?
Exactly, yes. And that also comes with practice and experience. A lot of beginning engravers will get lines that look like this. And that is because they're up so high and they're kind of walking it here like this. As you start to practice this, you bring that elbow down, you rely a little bit more on that blade engaging in the brass, your line starts to open up. Okay. So this eventually is what will happen, bringing that arm down a little bit more. Obviously you're not level, but not up so high. And that takes practice. Okay, getting it to open those lines up and make it look presentable. So that's your basic types of gravers, and that's your technique. Like I said, it's just the rocking back and forth. I usually do get warmed up if I'm going to do a big re-engraving. You can see I have my practice horn over here. I'll practice on that to kind of get warmed up. So there you go.
Do you want to show them a little bit on the practice horn so they can see?
Yeah, well, I was going to do a transfer here. I'm going to show you guys the two different types of engraving jobs that I do. The first type is re-engravings. So it's a horn, especially like vintage, like Mark 6s. Guys over the time over the years, it may have been buffed, or the engraving just wears away. What they'll do is they'll send it in here, and I basically follow the existing pattern, and I use tools that are at least the same size, if not maybe slightly bigger than the original lines. Since I have such a variety of gravers, I can match up the existing lines with what I have here. In a lot of cases, I'm using, like in the case of this 22.6, the exact graver that they used at the factory. And I'm basically following the lines. And it has to be at a certain point. If the engraving is too deep and you go over and recut it, it's what I call, it looks like a ghost engraving or like a double exposure. Where a lot of times the zigzags, it's practically impossible to get for you to actually match up with the existing zigzag. You're just kind of going over top of it. It's like, you know, footprints in the sand. You walk over top of those footprints, you're going to see yours more than the original footprints. So that's the first type of engraving job that I do here. The other type is if I need to do any kind of new or custom work. A lot of times, sometimes I'll actually draw it out on the instrument with a Sharpie.
Can you talk about which Sharpie you use? Because I know that's real.
Absolutely. I use the ultra-fine tip. The ultra-fine, not just the fine, because apparently this traditional Sharpie is considered a fine point.
Okay.
It is not very fine in my opinion.
And that's like
I'm sure they're thicker ones, but
so that's like a marker.
so this is more like a marker, but I use the thin one if I ever have to. Sometimes when I'm doing re-engravings and the original engraving has been buffed away, I have to a lot of times draw in what's missing and then follow that line. So, but yes, those are very important to have.
Are you always working with you know, markings or scribing, you know, or do you do anything freehand?
I don't do it as much. There are some engravers in this industry that do some great freehand work. Very rarely will I do freehand work. I try to either draw it out ahead of time so I can kind of see it. It's like a tattoo artist. You know, well, they'll put the stencil on and then they'll follow the lines. Some tattoo artists are great with just freehanding, but yeah, I tend to rely a little bit more on having the transfer down. If I'm doing, you know, new designs and I haven't drawn it up,
Okay.
is what it is. So I'm usually following some kind of pattern. A good way to do that, well, at least the way that I do, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to do it on the Wilmington logo. Here is the Wilmington logo, along with the different gravers that I use to make that.
So
what you have to do a transfer. So this is obviously the Wilmington logo.
Okay.
Okay. You are able to do what is called an acetone transfer, and this is acetone right here, if you use a laser jet printer. Okay. What you can do is you can actually transfer this ink, put it on a surface, acetone on the back, and the ink will actually transfer to whatever surface you're trying to engrave. Okay, acetone transfer using a laser printer. So if I want to print this, okay, if I want to engrave this, as you can see right here, the first thing I have to do is I have to reverse this image. Okay, because if I put this on like this and I make that transfer, when we take it up, this will be in reverse. So the first thing you have to do is you have to reverse it. So there is the Wilmington logo in reverse. So I could use this as a acetone transfer. Okay. But I'm not going to do one that big, so I got something a little bit more manageable here. I was practicing earlier, so I'm going to cut this one. I think I can do it in the space that's left here. Maybe I'll do this little guy.
Okay. While you're getting set up, I'm going to move the camera a little bit more overhead.
All right. So as you can see, these are printed in reverse. So when I flip them and do that acetone transfer, the words will not be backwards. If you're doing a design, it almost really doesn't matter. Sometimes, if you reverse it, it's just scroll stuff. So here we are, I've cut that out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my placement. Right there. A little bit of tape to hold it down. Anybody have any questions so far? Anybody asking?
Neil asked if our pizza had arrived. I think he heard the UPS bell ring.
Oh my goodness, I wish. Now I'm hungry for pizza. Jeez, thanks a lot.
It's getting to be that time. Ian asked about gravers.
Okay.
Bill Matthews is here. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill. Yep, Bill took one of my engraving courses at NatBert. Done a few of those. We've got to plan another one of those, which are always fun. So here we are. We got the acetone transfer on. I don't know if you can kind of see, but it says Wilmington. You can read that because I did print it off backwards.
Okay.
Use a little bit of acetone.
And that's just a stopper bottle.
Yep, stopper bottle. We do sell this, which is great for like that. And you can see when I add the acetone, it kind of goes a little clearer. Wipe it on a little bit. It You do have to saturate it a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll rub it to make sure that the ink adheres to the brass. Right there. And this is always the moment of truth, fingers crossed. And just peel this back, see what we got. And there we are.
Ian is saying, have you ever pushed through the paper rather than transferring it with the tool?
I have not. Yeah, as far as putting it down and then engraving over it, I have not done that. But you can see here we are. We have our Acetone Transfer. Sometimes, you know, if it's smaller stuff, the words may not get it, you know, transfer completely. So a lot of times I'll have to get in there with the Sharpie and just kind of draw it out.
Danny Alexander. Danny's from England. He says he wants to come over and do the Uber course sometime in the future. Well, Danny, maybe we can, let's be in touch. Maybe when you're allowed to come to America again.
That's right.
Or we're not allowed, or you're not allowed. I can't remember.
I think we're on restrictions.
We're not allowed to go anywhere right now.
Exactly.
But when that's over, yeah, let's do it.
We'll be good to go.
So,
All right,
so go ahead,
here
Ryan.
we have the transfer down, and I've already kind of planned out from this previous one what gravers I'm going to use in certain places. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the state outline, and for that I'm using a 10/8.
So for those of you who are overseas, this is the state of North Carolina, and we live right here at the bottom corner.
Yep.
Right at
I
the...
should put a little, right where we are, a little star, X marks the spot. So yeah, so that's where we are, North Carolina, Wilmington.
And so the Wilmington line has been named after the town that we live and work in.
Yep.
And started designing these instruments
So
here at the shop.
I got a little bit here that's kind of ran into this, so we're going to kind of maybe ignore that part of the state right there. Nobody cares so much about Western North Carolina, so we'll just...
I love Western North Carolina.
It's great. They got the mountains, you know.
They got the mountains.
We got the oceans here. We got the mountains here. Everything in the middle. There's people. I mean, the only thing is missing is right here, the Outer Banks. They're angry. They're not included in this. Don't worry, guys. I'll add you.
Well, you know, it's just a matter of time before they're no longer there
That's
anyway.
right. One big wave and boom, they're down. So this is my 10/8, and I'm going to do the outline of the state. So here we go. One thing
And
I
Neil's...
do find that helps is I like to use these.
Okay.
Because I unfortunately am getting older, and my eyesight is not what it used to be. So in order to see things up closer rather than squint, I like to use my visor here, my magnification visor, so I can get a little bit closer and see all the mistakes I make. So I'm going to start with this big long straight line.
Okay, let me just move the
So
camera.
this is kind of tricky in the engraving world, is to get straight lines straight. You can do a curved line and make it okay, because it's just kind of a curve. But getting a straight line to look completely straight is kind of difficult. So I'm going to make it look easy, or extremely difficult. So the leather ready,
And
away we go. When I first started to do engraving, I would come here in the shop when nobody was around. And it was one of those that I couldn't have you talk when I was... Don't even look at me. I can feel your eyes looking at me when I'm doing this. Get away from me, because I don't want to slip. And now I'm engraving and talking at the same time and keeping this, for the most part, fairly straight. I will be honest, it's a little tough holding on to this. That is one of the most difficult parts of engraving is holding on to the workpiece. When I put a saxophone in a mandrel, it's easy. It's there and I move around it. Some people like to hold the instrument and then they'll move the instrument and themselves. I like to move myself around the instrument.
Neil's saying, does it matter, you know, where or what you start with in terms of the tool, the number tool that you're doing, or on the pattern?
It doesn't necessarily. I'd like to do the outlines first. Like, let's say if I'm doing like a Mark 6, I will do the big outline first and get all the outlines, and it's usually with the larger ones, so a lot of times a 22/6. I'll do the outlines, and if there's more outlines with the smaller one, usually it's a 10/8. I'll do the outlines first. And then I start to fill in other little things here and there, like the shading, or these big, the accent marks, the lines with the round 61. So for this, I do tend to, rather than start with something like, this line going around here, doing this first and stopping here, I will get this big continuous outline first, and then I'll start filling in the other things. Like after I get the state done, I might go to, these designs here. And then probably at the end, I'll go around and finish it up with the lines. So these guys here, kind of show you this. The first time when I kind of put the graver down, I kind of give it a little push to kind of engage it. And just back and forth. Usually that little flick at the end to kind of release any chips you may have. There we go, just kind of filling it in as we go. And again, this is all the 10/8. I try to do all the lines that are the same size all at one time, so I'm not having to switch back and forth.
So there's the 10/8. And that's, which cut is that, a 10/8 again? Is that your
10/8 is a liner.
Liner cut.
Yep, the liner cut. Yeah, anytime it has the two numbers, the top number is, the first number rather is the size, width, whatever grading scale that E.C. Mueller is using, and then the second number is how many lines it's producing on the bottom.
And
So
Danny's saying, do you clamp the workpiece on the table, and, to keep it from moving around? He's just thinking about not losing a finger.
Yeah. I mean, it is difficult holding this down. I may take this down. The thing I like about it, I like to be able to move around my workpieces. Sitting down and engraving is a little tough for me. So I would probably maybe take this to the corner so I could be able to move around and keep kind of my arm in one position so I'm not moving in and out around like this. But yeah, workpiece holding is very important, very important. So now let's talk about doing some lettering. So for this, the Wilmington, what I'm using is as you can see here, it's a flat 40 for all this Wilmington lettering here. Okay. One trick that I will do when I am doing lettering, I tend to do all the lines in the same direction. So if I'm doing this W, I'm not going to do it like I'm writing a W. I'm not going to do this and then this and then this and then this. I'm going to make these top lines first. Okay, and then what I may do is I may do the vertical line. So I will do this I do the L, and I'll do this vertical line in the M, this one, I'll do this I again, I'll do the vertical lines. So that way I'm not having to move it around this way, move it around this way, move it around this way. So if I do this way, so that's part of the M, that's the middle part of the M, and that's the last part of that vertical M. So I'm going to leave those tops, the actual M parts, later. There's the I, there's that vertical part of the N, the other vertical part. Okay. This G is a little tricky. I may save that for later because it has this big curve, but I may do part of this. I try to get this all in one fell swoop, but sometimes you can't. But I'll come back to that one. Let me continue on with this T.
I'm going to move this so they can see what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that O. Round letters are always tricky. I charge extra for those. Yep, the more O's in your name, the more expensive it is. There we are. So I've done all the I guess if you're looking at it, the vertical lines. The I, the L, part of the M, another I, N. I saved this G for a little later. There's the T, and then the N.
Have you ever done any engraving on cylinders, like a flute? Or Lewis is asking about, have you ever done engraving on silver-nickel, silver-plated flutes?
I believe so. I have done it. The trickiest thing about engraving flute is engraving on a flat surface is fairly easy because I just keep this angle the same. If I were to engrave, let's say, over this bottle, and I were to keep it the same, I would be good to right about here, then all of a sudden it would slip right on. So if I'm engraving on a round surface, I have to actually adjust my angle. So I would come up, and as I would come down, I'm coming down to follow that curve.
Okay.
So engraving on round surfaces is a lot more tricky than engraving flat surfaces. And then when you get into engraving a saxophone that has these multiple surfaces, I mean, when I if I were to engrave this way, that's essentially flat. Okay? If I were to engrave this way, that's essentially round. If I were to engrave from here to here, that curve is changing as I'm coming up. So it's a straight line, but it's also going around a curved surface. So getting that to stay within the confines, it's a little tricky. You can see I was practicing here with that. There's a big long line. You can see a straight line, or at least supposed to be straight. But it's going over these multiple curves. This is curved, and as we get up here, it's curved this way, and it's curved back this way. So keeping that straight, it's a little tricky. It does, as you can see, it takes practice. You know, just being able to do straight lines and keep them looking straight. You know, you can do a curve and make it look kind of natural and organic, but a straight line is a straight line is a straight line. If it doesn't look straight, people will know. Okay, it's very, very obvious. But as far as doing curves, like if I get down to this O here, okay, the way I would do that O, let me draw it out so you guys can see. Yep, the O in Wilmington. The way I would draw that, or I would engrave that O, so here's the O. I would start at the top, and I would probably go to maybe about here, or I could see if I could go all the way down to this position, and I would flip it, so that would be going this direction. And I'd flip it, and I would start here, and I would go the opposite direction. So I'm not necessarily going one continuous all the way around this. Oh, I mean, I could, but kind of getting at that angle is a little tricky. So if you start here, like I'm going to start at the very top of this O, and I'm going to go to right about, so I'm starting about 12 o'clock, and I'm going to go to about 9 o'clock. So if I start here, and again, I'm going to try to be very careful, get my hands out of the way. Right there. Okay.
And you've adjusted the workpiece just because you can.
Just because I can, yep. So I'm going to keep going with that. You notice when I end up, my blade is completely perpendicular to that line. Just going to keep going. I know I said I don't go all the way around, but I'm able to move this so it's a little bit easier. Sometimes I'm going to have to come this way and maybe have to come back this way. And sometimes you have to make your lines meet. So if I'm engraving this line here, sometimes I'll start here, stop there, and I'll start the other way. And then what you have to do is you have to make them completely line up so that they touch like this and they're not off like that.
When you, Danny's asking about, he's asking about the lacquer. He said, so if you're doing this, for example, on a plain bell, so there's lots of space to work on, do you do this straight through the lacquer? He says, just thinking about playing or lacquer possibly flaking, chipping off as you engrave.
That is a good question. You know, most of what I do when I'm doing re-engraving is they're, at least here in the pro shop when we do our silver plated, they're bare brass. It is possible to engrave through lacquer. In fact, some engravers prefer to engrave through lacquer because it gives you just a little bit more grip Okay, engraving on bare brass is almost like walking on ice, where it's very slippery. Okay, engraving on a horn of bare brass that's been lacquered is kind of like walking on linoleum. Yes, it's still slippery, but it's not slippery like ice. Okay, if that makes kind of sense.
Yeah.
The lacquer so much doesn't, I mean, yes, it does, it will start to wear. You've seen those old Mark 6s that have been engraved through the lacquer, and that's where the lacquer is starting to peel off. So it does cut through. As far as chipping off, not so much. I've tried to do it in the past where I've tried to do re-engravings on horns that guys have painted, and paint will chip. I don't know how Yamaha and Selmer does it with their black. It's either some kind of lacquer, how they lacquer in black and then they go and engrave them. I'm still working on that tip. If you guys know how they do it, please let me know. But yeah, engraving over painted surfaces will chip. Engraving over lacquered surfaces, not so much chipping, but you are disturbing that lacquered surface. So when the lacquer does start to wear, that's where it's going to wear from.
Cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the other thing is since we do a lot of silver-plated horns here, engraving on silver-plated horns, if you engrave through that, you're basically going to have brass showing through because you're engraving through that silver plate. That stuff is fine to engrave over. It doesn't chip and crack like a lacquered surface. But when we're doing restorations here in the pro shop, we will engrave it first and then send it off to have it plated so everything is solid, uniform, silver color. So you don't have that brass engraving mark sticking through.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's the essentials of hand engraving. You saw me, doing a transfer. We went over different types of gravers, the technique, that wriggle back and forth. I think that is about it, unless anybody has any other questions.
I think that's it for now. Danny said thank you for answering his question.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this was informative and I didn't bore you too much.
Thank you, guys.
So yes, awesome.
If you haven't,
we'll see you probably Friday.
Oh yeah, Friday we're gonna come.
Stay tuned, folks.
We're gonna release our something on Friday.
Yeah, release something special.
Something
All right.
special.
So thanks for watching, everybody.
Until next time.
See you next time.